12-year-old girl saved plane from crashing. 24 hours later, she received a shocking invitation from the president. Emma Collins sat quietly by the window, her knees tucked slightly in, hands resting on the blanket across her lap. The low hum of the plane was the only constant in the shifting quiet. Cabin lights had dimmed to a soft glow, casting a peaceful haze over the rows of passengers. Around her, the scene was routine. Someone across the aisle had dozed off with their mouth slightly open. Another was watching a film with their head tilted to one side. A couple behind her murmured softly as they shared a pair of earphones. Everything seemed normal, safe, comfortable. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. But Emma couldn't sleep. She tried. She'd pulled the blanket up to her chest, leaned her head against the side panel, and closed her eyes more than once. Yet every few minutes, she'd open them again. Something didn't feel quite right, though she couldn't put her finger on it. It wasn't fear exactly, just a prickling sense, like when you're being watched or when you're about to forget something important. With a quiet sigh, she pushed the headphones off her ears. The quietness deepened. The music and movie sounds faded into muffled distance. She looked around, not searching for anything in particular, just letting her eyes roam. Her fingers played absently with the edge of her seatbelt. That's when she heard it. A hiss, sharp, sudden, almost like air escaping through a tiny gap. She frowned and tilted her head slightly, waiting to hear it again. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then it came back, subtle, just below the line of regular cabin noise, but definitely there. Her brows furrowed. It was close. Very close. She leaned down, slowly, her curiosity growing with every second. The hissing was just beneath her seat now, steady and unmistakable. Emma's hand reached below. She didn't know what she was looking for, maybe a dropped sweet wrapper or someone's charging cable rubbing against something. But instead of something solid, she felt a faint warmth in the air. Not warm like a heater, warm like something mechanical, something that shouldn't be. Her fingers hovered, then withdrew. She sat upright, glancing again at the passengers around her. No one had noticed. Not a soul stirred. Not even the flight attendants pacing the aisles every now and then gave a second glance in her direction. Trying to shake it off, she turned her attention to the in-flight monitor. A gentle blue screen showed their position over the Atlantic. But something was wrong there too. The display kept flickering, faint lines ghosting across it now and again. They were barely visible, but Emma had sharp eyes. Once seen, it was impossible to unsee. Her heart thudded, not loudly, but steadily. The kind of rhythm that tells you, this isn't normal. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The hiss was still there, steady as ever. Then came a faint smell. Something metallic, burnt, almost. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to make her stomach twist. She'd helped her mom in the kitchen enough to know the smell of something overheating. This wasn't the scent of travel or pressurized air. It was electrical. Her mind raced. Was it just her? Could she be overthinking it? Maybe planes made odd noises all the time. But no one else seemed to notice anything. And the flight crew hadn't made any announcements. Still, a stubborn alarm in her chest kept ringing. She pressed the call button. Her fingers hovered above it for a second before she committed, uncertain whether she was about to make a fool of herself or do something important. When the light came on, she felt a twinge of doubt, but it was too late now. A flight attendant approached after a minute, her face calm, polite, entirely unaware that something unusual might be going on. Emma leaned in slightly, speaking softly so she wouldn't disturb others. I heard a strange noise under my seat, she said, her voice unsure but clear. And there's a weird smell. And the screen keeps flickering. The attendant's smile didn't fade, but her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, enough to show she was listening. Okay, sweetheart, she said kindly. Let me check that for you. As the woman leaned down to investigate, Emma sat back, heart pounding now, not from fear of danger, but fear that she'd imagined everything. That she'd interrupted someone's job over nothing. But that same warm air was still pulsing faintly near her feet. The smell, too, though slight, remained. The flickering had stopped for the moment, as if it too was waiting for something. She sat still, barely breathing. The flight attendant hadn't said anything yet. She was crouched down, her hands carefully moving around the lower seat area, her face now more focused. There was no smile now. Just quiet concentration. Emma didn't know it yet, but the next words from that flight attendant would change everything. The flight attendant stood up from her crouch, brushing her hands on her uniform with a slight frown. Her calm expression had shifted ever so slightly, enough to show she no longer thought Emma's complaint was just a nervous child's imagination. She muttered a polite reassurance and walked briskly down the aisle, disappearing behind the curtain into the restricted area where the crew operated. Inside the cockpit and flight crew area, the air was cooler, more sterile, and filled with soft beeping sounds from instruments and indicators. The senior flight attendant approached the first officer with a low voice, passing along Emma's report. The words hissing, flickering screen, and burning smell caused a pause in conversation. Though seasoned professionals, neither of the pilots dismissed it outright. Probably nothing, the co-pilot muttered. But he turned his attention to the system monitor anyway, scanning rows of status readings, most of which blinked green. Still, a faint amber icon pulsed near the bottom right, a warning light tucked under auxiliary systems. It wasn't accompanied by an alarm and hadn't been automatically flagged, but it was there. The captain narrowed his eyes. That wasn't lit earlier, he said under his breath. He leaned in, tapped a button, and expanded the diagnostic report. A code appeared. Electrical feedback loop detected. Location, lower aft section, near the cargo hold. He didn't waste time. Get maintenance on satellite, he instructed, and immediately reached for the cabin phone. He requested a silent, internal systems check. The cabin crew would stay calm. Passengers must not suspect anything until they knew more. In the galley, the attending crew exchanged looks. Procedures were being set in motion. One attendant fetched the portable diagnostic scanner stored in a secure cabinet and headed back to Emma's row without explanation. She crouched again, more focused this time, and gently asked the girl to lift her feet. Emma did so silently, watching her with wide eyes. The scanner blinked red. The attendant straightened, whispering a thank you to Emma, and walked swiftly back. There was no panic in her steps, but a clear urgency had taken hold. Another crew member followed her into the cockpit with the results. Electrical fault confirmed. Warm current detected near venting duct. Scanner caught elevated temperature fluctuation. The captain ran a hand down his face, now fully alert. That's a potential short circuit, he said. Could trigger a fire in a pressurized cabin. Cargo hold is full, too, the co-pilot added quietly. Any spark down there? No one finished the thought. They didn't have to. Check emergency landing options, the captain ordered. The co-pilot pulled up nearby diversion airports. They were halfway over the Atlantic, still hours from London. There was a field with basic runway capacity on the southern tip of Greenland, not ideal, but better than gambling with an unknown fault. The captain took hold of the radio. His voice was firm, controlled. He contacted air traffic control, making the declaration. Emergency reroute. Possible onboard electrical issue. Request immediate clearance. Inside the crew quarters, attendants received word through their private communication channel. They would need to prepare the cabin for descent quietly. No alarms. No signs of distress. They practiced this. Calm instructions, passive cues, routine smiles. One stewardess began securing loose equipment, quietly locking trolleys into place. Another checked emergency supplies, running through a mental list. The cabin lights remained dim. No announcement was made. No warning bells sounded. But beneath the surface, everyone moved with silent coordination. In the cockpit, the atmosphere had sharpened. Dials were adjusted. Flight path altered. The plane began a gentle, almost imperceptible descent. The fault, according to updated diagnostics, hadn't worsened, but no one was willing to bet it would stay that way. Emma still sat quietly in her seat, watching the attendants shuffle about with a little more purpose than before. She knew something was happening. Her stomach knotted, not from fear, but from the weight of possibility. Had she really caught something that serious? Her eyes drifted to the window. The sky outside was still vast, still dark, still scattered with stars. Nothing looked different. But somewhere in the cargo hold, beneath passengers peacefully sleeping or watching films, wires might have been heating too fast. Systems might have been seconds away from reacting. She could only imagine. In the front of the aircraft, the captain prepared a final systems override check. His voice was calm, deliberate as he coordinated with the co-pilot. Their faces revealed little, but every instruction was loaded with precision. There was no room for doubt now. One small malfunction in flight can escalate in minutes, and they weren't going to give it that chance. As the plane gradually began its descent, its passengers unaware, the crew readied themselves for the next critical moments. The wheels hit the tarmac with a jarring bounce, jolting awake those who had drifted off in the final hour of the flight. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. quickly followed by a relieved burst of applause. Tired faces smiled, some even laughed quietly. The landing was rough but safe, and that was all anyone seemed to care about. Outside, flashing lights painted streaks across the early morning mist. Emergency vehicles lined both sides of the runway, fire engines, ambulances, security units. All on standby. Their engines rumbled low, ready to act but never needed. From inside the aircraft, the scene looked distant and surreal, like a rehearsal for something far more dramatic. The plane slowed to a halt. No smoke. No sirens. No visible sign of disaster. Just the crisp gray light of dawn breaking over the tarmac at a small Irish airport no one had expected to see. Inside, people stretched and unbuckled, murmuring about delays, about missed connections, about weather perhaps. No one asked why they had landed here. No one even seemed curious. Except Emma. She sat frozen, her seatbelt still fastened while her parents gathered their belongings. Her mother, bleary-eyed, noticed her silence. "Sweetheart," she asked, brushing hair away from Emma's forehead. "You all right?" Emma nodded slowly, lips pressed together. Her father, rubbing the back of his neck, added, "Bit of a bumpy one. Trying to lighten the mood." Emma didn't respond. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Shannon Airport. We made a brief stop here due to minor technical difficulties. Your safety has always been our top priority. Thank you for your patience." That was it. Minor technical difficulties. The words hung in the air like steam that refused to disappear. Polite. Vague. Safe. The cabin doors hadn't opened yet, but passengers were already standing in the aisles, shuffling bags and adjusting jackets. Emma's parents joined the crowd. She didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the closed curtain at the front of the plane, the one separating passengers from the world she'd briefly entered hours ago. She remembered the crew's faces, how their expressions had shifted from calm to tense, how the attendant had rushed off after scanning the space beneath her seat. She remembered the smell, that faint electrical tang that no one else had seemed to notice. And she remembered the moment the captain had walked past her row, just for a second, his eyes flicking down at her with something almost like recognition? Gratitude? She couldn't tell. Now, he was hidden again behind protocol and polite phrasing, reducing everything that had happened to a tidy explanation. Minor technical difficulties. That was what people would tell each other. That's what news reports, if there were any, might say. Nothing else. Emma felt a strange tightness in her chest. She didn't want applause or attention, but she wasn't sure if what she'd done had even mattered. Maybe it would have been caught anyway. Maybe the system would have flagged it eventually. Maybe they'd landed for no reason at all. And yet, the emergency vehicle still waited outside, engines humming. That wasn't routine. That wasn't minor. Still, no one had said anything. No one had called her name. No one from the crew had returned to speak with her. It was like she was just another kid who had slept through turbulence. Her fingers twisted together in her lap. She didn't tell her parents what had happened. Not yet. Not while the truth sat hidden behind clipped words and closed doors. She didn't want to sound dramatic. She didn't want them to dismiss it as a dream, a coincidence, a child's imagination working overtime on a long flight. But deep down, something inside her stirred. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, she had changed something. That without her, things might have ended differently. Still, she stayed quiet. The line of passengers began moving as the doors opened. Cold Irish air slipped into the cabin, bringing with it the scent of damp grass and morning. As her family stepped off the plane and into the shuttle waiting on the tarmac, Emma looked back one last time. She expected nothing. No farewell. No secret nod. No one even glanced in her direction. It felt ordinary, unremarkable. And that, somehow, made it feel even stranger. By the time they entered the terminal, the airport buzzed with quiet routine. Coffee machines hissed. Luggage rolled over tiled floors. Airline staff tapped on tablets, rebooking flights. Emma walked among them, her backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes searching the faces around her. But everyone looked as they always did, rushed, tired, impatient. Whatever had happened on that plane was already being folded into normality, hidden away. And so, she said nothing. Not yet. The airport was half asleep in the soft glow of mid-morning. Tired passengers lounged in uncomfortable chairs, checked their phones, or stood quietly in queues. The chaos of the earlier emergency landing had ebbed away, replaced by a quiet, almost eerie normalcy. Yet, Beneath the calm surface, something had shifted. Emma sat beside her parents in a small seating area near the cafe, a juice box in hand. She looked small in the oversized terminal chair, her legs not quite reaching the floor. Her parents were talking in low voices, still confused by the rerouting, the hush from the flight crew, the captain's clipped explanation. Emma hadn't said much, just that she was tired. They didn't push. A television mounted in the corner of the lounge played a muted news broadcast. A breaking banner flashed red across the screen. At first, no one paid it any mind, until a cleaner paused, eyebrows rising as they stared at the footage being looped behind the presenter. A few others turned to look. The screen showed the runway from a grainy security angle, emergency vehicles lining its edge. Then, it cut to footage from inside the plane, a CCTV still from the cabin. There, a girl was leaning forward in her seat, speaking earnestly to a flight attendant. That girl was Emma. It happened slowly at first. A few passengers from the same flight gasped in surprise, recognizing the scene. A man nearby did a double take, pointed at the screen, then turned toward Emma. She sank further into her chair. Across the room, a technician from the airline confirmed what the crew hadn't said aloud earlier. There had been an electrical fault near the cargo hold. Unstable wiring. A spark could have triggered an onboard fire. Maybe even worse. The crew's attention, drawn early enough by a young passenger, had led to a rapid, decisive emergency descent. There was no doubt about it anymore. Emma Collins had made the difference. Within minutes, the terminal buzzed like a kicked beehive. A local reporter caught wind of the story and was already scribbling notes by the cafe counter. 12-year-old girl averts tragedy midair blinked from their open laptop. Emma's name had just hit the internet. She didn't notice it at first. She was still nursing her juice, staring at the floor. But her parents did. Her father glanced at the screen, then back at her. Emma. He began, cautiously, unsure if he should ask. Her mom's hand was already resting gently on her shoulder, puzzled and anxious. Then the first camera flash lit up the air. A woman with a microphone approached, speaking softly but urgently. Emma Collins? Hi, I'm with Channel 9. Just a few questions, if that's okay. Before Emma could respond, more voices followed. Journalists materialized as if out of thin air, phones raised, cameras snapping, notebooks open. One had a tablet showing the airport footage. Another asked, "How did you know something was wrong?" A man leaned forward, saying, "People are calling you a hero." Emma blinked, her mouth slightly open. She hadn't expected this, hadn't wanted it, really. Her pulse quickened, and she leaned back into her seat, overwhelmed. The buzz of voices swirled around her like a storm, each question sharper than the last. Her parents rose, forming a protective barrier, shielding her from the sudden barrage. "Please. Give her some space," her mom said firmly. Her dad added, "She's just a child." But it was too late. The story was already out. Tweets, headlines, live updates. Her face was on every nearby screen. The headline, "12-year-old girl saves plane," now scrolled across the bottom of the news channel. Some online articles had even added a subtitle, "Instincts and Courage of a Young Passenger Avert Possible Tragedy." Across the world, people were beginning to take notice. Emma sat still, eyes wide, mind spinning. She hadn't told anyone for recognition. She hadn't even known if what she did had meant anything. Now, the world seemed to be confirming that it had. For a brief moment, she felt like she was watching it happen to someone else. Some other girl, clever and brave, who had pointed out something strange and helped save lives. But it was her. The same nervous 12-year-old who had hesitated to even say anything in the first place. The same girl who doubted herself even after the landing. And now everyone wanted to hear her speak. Yet she had no words. As more reporters approached and the cameras kept flashing, her mother leaned in gently and whispered, "You don't have to say anything. Not yet. Just breathe." So Emma did just that. She breathed. Somewhere deep down, beyond the noise and lights and praise, something settled inside her. A quiet certainty. She had done the right thing, even if no one had ever found out. That mattered more than the headlines. Still, she couldn't help but wonder what would come next. The morning sunlight spilled across Emma's bedroom floor, brushing against the pale blue walls and scattered soft toys that still clung to the edges of her childhood. Her phone buzzed for the third time before she finally stirred, groggy from a restless night. Rubbing her eyes, she reached for it, expecting maybe a message from a friend, a missed call from her aunt. But the screen lit up with chaos, hundreds of unread notifications. Her eyes darted from one headline to the next. 12-year-old hero identified as Emma Collins. She saved us all. Passengers speak out. Young girl's quick thinking prevents mid-air tragedy. She blinked in disbelief. Text messages from unknown numbers poured in. Journalists requesting interviews. A local news station asking if she'd be available for a morning segment. Even strangers, people she'd never met, were sending her praise and messages of thanks. Emma dropped the phone onto her bed, overwhelmed. She hadn't expected this. Not any of it. She'd been trying to help, that's all. She hadn't thought it would explode into something the whole world now seemed to be talking about. Downstairs, voices rose. Her mom sounded flustered on the phone. Her dad's tone was quieter, confused. Emma patted down barefoot, still in her pajamas. As she reached the living room, her parents turned to her, faces pale and tired. "We've had 3 different news stations call," her dad said quietly. "Someone from the airline's legal department wants to speak with us. They said something about safety reports." Her mom was clutching a mug with both hands, as though it might steady her nerves. Emma opened her mouth to respond but didn't get the chance. A sharp knock rang out from the front door. Her dad frowned, exchanged a glance with her mom, and stood to answer it. On the porch stood a man in a dark suit, clipboard in one hand, a slim leather folder in the other. He wore a badge on his lapel, small, gold, official-looking. "Good morning. Are you Mr. and Mrs. Collins?" he asked briskly. "Yes. I've been instructed to deliver this," he said, handing over the folder with both hands, as if it carried something delicate. "Directly to Miss Emma Collins." Emma stepped forward, hesitant. The man looked at her and smiled gently. "This is for you." He tipped his head respectfully, turned, and walked away before anyone could ask another question. Emma stared at the folder in her hands. It was heavier than she expected. On the front, embossed in gold, was the seal of the President of the United States. Her heart thumped. She slowly walked over to the kitchen table and sat down, her parents gathering around her. With careful fingers, she unfastened the clasp and opened the folder. Inside, on crisp, official letterhead, was a typed message. She read it aloud. "Dear Emma Collins, the United States of America owes you a great debt of gratitude. Your actions on Flight 2091 showed bravery, composure, and a level of awareness far beyond your years. Thanks to your attentiveness and courage, a great tragedy was avoided. Your story has reached us here at the White House and has touched many hearts across the nation. It is my honor to extend a personal invitation to you and your family to visit the White House as my guests. I would like to thank you in person and hear your story. With respect and admiration. President Elizabeth Warren." Silence fell over the kitchen. Emma's hand trembled slightly as she lowered the letter. Her parents sat frozen, staring at her. Her mom was the first to speak, voice barely above a whisper. "The President?" Emma nodded slowly, still not quite believing it herself. "She wants to meet me." Her dad looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the floor. "I don't even know what to say," he muttered. Emma looked down at the letter again. She wasn't sure how she felt. Honored, yes, but also unsure. Everything was moving so fast, faster than she could make sense of. Just yesterday, she was listening to music on a plane, wondering if she should speak up about something that didn't feel right. Now the president wanted to meet her. Her mom sat beside her, gently placing an arm around her shoulders. "You did something amazing," she said. "We're proud of you. No matter what happens next." For a long moment, none of them spoke. Outside, the day carried on, birds chirping, bins being rolled to the curb, neighbors chatting about nothing. But inside the Collins home, Tom stood still. Emma folded the letter back into its folder, still unsure what to make of the growing weight of her story. And for the first time since it all began, she smiled. Not because of the fame or the fuss, but because she finally believed it mattered. Emma stood just beyond the tall double doors, her fingers clutching the hem of her pale blue dress. She'd never worn anything so formal before, and the fitted shoes pinched slightly at her heels. The corridor felt like something out of a dream. Tall white walls, polished floors, guards standing perfectly still. She wasn't sure if she was supposed to smile or keep her face serious. A woman with a kind voice and a clipboard leaned in and whispered, "You're up." Emma took a deep breath and stepped forward. The doors opened. The private reception hall was smaller than she expected, but grander. Golden lights spilled from chandeliers overhead, casting a soft glow on the gathered crowd. Officials in suits and military uniforms lined the room. Journalists clutched notepads and adjusted microphones. At the far end, beneath the flag, stood the President of the United States. Emma's breath caught. President Elizabeth Warren stepped forward with a warm, steady smile. "Welcome, Emma," she said gently, extending her hand. Emma shook it, feeling the warmth of the gesture. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. The president turned toward the audience. "Today, we honor a young girl who reminded us all that courage doesn't wait for age. That being alert, caring for others, and choosing to act, those are the traits of a true citizen." Applause followed, firm and sincere. Emma blinked, overwhelmed. "Emma Collins," the president continued, looking back at her, "your vigilance prevented what could have been a tragedy. You trusted your instincts. You spoke up. And you saved lives." Emma's eyes flicked across the room. She saw her parents near the front, her mom holding a tissue in both hands. Behind them, unfamiliar faces nodded with admiration. "And so," the president said, her voice lifting, "on behalf of this country, we not only thank you, we honor you." There was a pause. The room stilled. "I am proud to offer you a full scholarship to any university of your choice when the time comes. Your future is bright, Emma, and your bravery is now part of our nation's story." Emma froze. A scholarship? Any university? More applause followed, louder this time. Cameras clicked. Someone called her name to look their way, but she didn't. She couldn't. The moment felt too big. The president leaned in again and said softly, "You earned this, Emma." She nodded, tears threatening to well. "Thank you, so much." The journalist moved in slightly, flashes lighting up the room. Her photo was taken with the president. She was handed a certificate in a leather folder. A gold pin in the shape of an eagle was gently fastened to her dress. People clapped again. The atmosphere was warm, almost celebratory. Emma tried to stand tall, but inside she still felt like the girl who'd sat in seat 18A, wondering whether to speak up about a strange smell and flickering screen. Now here she was, standing in the White House, being hailed as a hero. As the crowd began to mingle and the reporters shifted focus, Emma took a moment to breathe. She spotted a tray of juice glasses on a table nearby and quietly made her way over. Her parents came beside her, both beaming but still a little stunned. "You did this," her dad whispered, squeezing her shoulder. "And you did it your way." Emma looked up at the golden walls of the White House, still struggling to believe any of it was real. And for once, she let herself smile without hesitation. Emma walked through the doors of her school, greeted by an eruption of applause and cheers. Her heart raced, but her footsteps remained steady. This wasn't the airport, the White House, or even the unfamiliar glimmer of bright lights and cameras. This was home. The auditorium was packed with students and teachers. Their faces were filled with excitement, admiration, and awe. Banners hung from the walls, each one reading, "Hero in our hearts, Emma saves the day," and, simply, "Thank you, Emma." The atmosphere was electric. The same kids who used to sit next to her in class now stood on their feet, chanting her name. "Emma, Emma, Emma." She couldn't help but smile, though it was a small, humble one. She didn't feel like a hero. Not really. She was just Emma, the same girl who liked to read books, play video games, and spend time with her family. Yet, here she was, the center of attention, with everyone looking up to her. The principal, Mr. Harper, stood at the podium. "We are incredibly proud to have Emma as one of our own. Her quick thinking and bravery saved the lives of everyone on that plane." His voice was warm, filled with pride. "And today, we celebrate her courage." As he spoke, Emma glanced around the room, her eyes falling on the mural being painted on the wall. The students had started it the week before, but now it was nearly finished. It was a beautiful image of her, standing tall, eyes fixed forward, surrounded by planes in the sky. She felt her cheeks flush, the reality of it sinking in. Her friends sat in the front row, waving enthusiastically at her. She waved back, then took a seat at the front of the stage, feeling a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. This wasn't something she had asked for, but here she was, unable to hide the pride that swelled in her chest as the assembly continued. One of her teachers, Mrs. Lawson, handed Emma a small plaque. "This is a token of appreciation from all of us," she said. The plaque read, "For bravery beyond measure, Emma Collins." Emma took it, holding it in her hands as if it were made of glass, fragile and precious. But all the recognition, all the cheers, felt distant. She couldn't shake the memory of the flight, the hissing sound under the seat, the flickering lights. She thought back to the moment when she hesitated but then acted. The plane could have gone down, but it didn't. That was what mattered to her. The students around her continued to chant, their voices rising in unison. Emma! Emma! She turned to them, offering a small smile, her heart racing in a quiet sort of way. She was proud of what she had done, but she didn't need all of this. The cheers, the murals, the plaque, it didn't feel like it belonged to her. It was as if she were playing a part in someone else's story. As the ceremony came to a close, Emma took a deep breath, stood up, and walked to the center of the stage. She'd been asked to say a few words, but in all honesty, she wasn't sure what to say. Her mind kept returning to the same thought. She had simply listened. That was all. Taking the microphone in her hand, she spoke quietly, but every word was clear. I just listened when something didn't feel right. That's all. The words were simple, but they rang true. Her voice echoed through the auditorium, and for a moment, everything seemed still. A hush fell over the room. Emma smiled again, a soft, genuine smile. Then she stepped down from the stage, her heart light, her mind at peace. The loud applause that followed felt like a distant sound, as though it were happening to someone else. As the screen slowly faded to black, a message appeared, words shining across the screen. Always stay aware. Even the smallest voice can make the biggest difference. And then, silence. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.